Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. We're getting back on that Gravely again, doing a motor swap on it. This is, of course, the gigantic Kawasaki motor that was on it, and that is the slightly less gigantic but equal in horsepower Briggs & Stratton down there. We're going to work on in a bit. What we're doing right now is robbing the wiring harness. This thing has a wiring harness, of course, that's attached to the motor. Well, we need that. And this one down here has a different plug setup, so we're just going to swap these wires over to that engine. It's not as hard as it sounds because they pretty much got exactly the same connections. We've got voltage regulator out. That's the voltage regulators back over here behind by the starter. This is the start wire. Now this one may cause a problem because this one has the solenoid here is built onto the starter, and so we're going to have a solenoid. I may have to install one, no big deal, they're easy to get. This is probably the carburetor wire. Come around over, here's the carburetor. I've already unplugged it. No, I haven't, but I flagged it as carb. It's got these little paper tags. They call them barbell tags. They're for like marking jewelry in a jewelry store. They're almost impossible to tear. You have to cut them off. They are excellent for when you're doing a wiring harness and you need to remember where a wire goes in a big jumble of wires. Car stereos, things like that. Anytime you've got a bunch of wires that you need to individually mark, these are the way. They just really work, and they're cheap, very cheap. Okay, moving on. We got a kill wire too that's buried up in here somewhere. It'll run to both coils and ground them out. This is a 90-degree V8, so chances are it has a single wire kill, no diodes. This, I believe, is a 60-degree V8. I'm not sure. It could be 90. It sure looks like 90. Either way, there's a set of diodes that's meant to keep the coils separate from each other, so that when you turn it off, it actually turns off. And also when it's running, the coils don't talk to each other and cause misfires. So that it's a little tough to explain on the fly, but basically the reason for those diodes is to keep the voltage created by those diodes by those coils separate from each other. And if a diode fails, you'll end up running on one cylinder, because it'll be grounding through the other coil, I guess is the best way to word it. But long story short, those diodes have to be good. This may have a set. If it does, chances are they're better than that set. But we'll try, if it has them, we'll try it. If it doesn't have them, we'll use the ones in this one. And if this one's bad, I have more. There's no reason to buy a wiring harness for 2 diodes. You can get at Radio Shack, which I realize Radio Shack's defunct, but I'm lucky enough to still have one in town. But I got a whole jar full of them, so no big deal. Anyway, let me get you set up in the stand. We're going to take some of this apart just to get the wires out of it. And then we're going to transplant the wires over to that engine. It also needs a little cleaning. I'm going to do that off camera, but I am going to connect the wires while I'm on camera so you kind of get an idea what's going on. I may replace those coils. They're not bad. They're just really, really rusty. And the problem is when they do get really, really rusty, they start swelling. Those individual plates in the coils, like a stack of paper almost, but it's metal sheets, little thin metal sheets. They will fluff up and get fatter and fatter. And when that happens, the coil basically is done. I don't know that those have done it yet, but they look pretty freaking grody. So they're coming out. I got a pair of new ones. There's no reason not to use them. I've been sitting on them forever. All right, let me get you in the stand. We'll take the lid off of this bad boy and start disassembling it enough that I can get them wires out, and then we'll start transplanting them into the other engine. I don't know what I'm going to do with this boat anchor. I guess take it apart and scrap it. It's really not good for anything else unless he wants it back. I don't know that he has a boat big enough to need an anchor that size. All right, we'll be back in a second. All right, we got a lot of bolts to pull here. Of all of the bolts, this is the one you want to... It's actually not the bolt you got to watch out for. It's this freaking oil tube. You can break that thing off. You can break it off when it's still bolted in, I guess, but once it's free and easy, it's just flopping in the breeze, and least little thing will either snap it off in a hole or pop it out of the hole, Either way, you're going to have an oil mess. This engine, thankfully, is not going to create an oil mess because, if you recall, the reason it's up here on the bench and dead as a mackerel is because it tossed a rod because it ran out of oil. And the oil I drained out of it didn't make half an inch in a cottage cheese tub, so yeah, not going to make a mess there. I like how this engine is made. This is a good, durable engine. And the big, heavy crankshaft is nice, except that it causes it to be almost impossible to replace it with anything else. The bolt pattern, though, that mower, that Gravely mower, is dual drilled, which means it's made for a couple of different engines. Probably there were options. Either there were on purpose. I don't know that I've pulled them. I'm going to leave them for a second, just in case. There's never a reason to pull a bolt you don't have to. If you have to, well, obviously you have to. If you don't have to, really no good reason to pull it, unless you're disassembling it and saving the bolts. Or I don't know why you, well, there's chances you might need to do that, but most of the time, if I scrap one of these things, I just keep the steel with the steel, and if there's steel bolts and a steel plate, I leave the steel bolts in. All right. Yeah, there's a few things about this I like. I like that it's heavy duty. There's a few things I don't like about it, and that it's an oddball that costs twice as much as any other engine. And fact of the matter is, when your Gravely gets to be, you know, this is like a 2006 or 2009, I forget, but she's old. And when they get to be that old, people aren't spending the money for a new engine. They're going to look for a used engine. And I bet you there's only two reasons those mowers are ever retired. One of them would be the engine. The other one, as I sit and think about it, I'm going to have to get right in front of the camera. As I sit and think about it, one of the other reasons that you might retire one of these is those transmissions. While you might change an engine, as we're doing here, even though it ain't the easiest thing in the world, it can be done. Those transmissions, you kind of got to go with what fits. And what fits is going to be the one it comes with. Boy, that baby is well and truly hidden back there. And I dropped my 10 millimeter. Well, we're going to have to move you for a second. It's down here somewhere. Come on. Okay. Probably should have got a ratchet for this, but there's just not that many bolts, and they're just not that hard to handle. There we go. It's just in a stupid place. And I don't want to turn this around because the way I've got it set in its own weight will keep it where I want it. It's heavy in the front towards the heads up here. If I turned it around where it'd be easy to get to these bolts, the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to want to topple off table. And I've got it clamped down with this little clamp, and that helps. But I don't want to put a lot of load on that clamp because this is a Harbor Freight table. It's made out of the hardest freaking hardwood around. I don't know, some kind of Vietnamese hardwood or Chinese, who knows. Whatever it is, it's tough. And that's a plus, but it's also brittle. When I got it, when I unpacked it, it had some broken bits on it. Handling damage, I'm sure. I'm going to need pliers. I gotta take that gas line off because the gas line is connected to the fuel pump. I'm kind of keeping that fuel pump attached to this cover for now, but I will probably be using that in the, well, not new, but in the replacement engine. And that's largely because it's the exact right one that the engine takes. It'll even fit on the engine with no problem. But it's known working recently. The one on that engine, who knows? I mean, you can try it, but you might be chasing your tail for a while. It might have a problem. Come off there. Okay. Fuel line's off. This is the vacuum line here. I think. Yeah, it'd have to be. The other one's a fuel line from the tank. So give that a little wiggle jiggle. And maybe it'll come right off of there. Yeah. Okay. So, let's see if this cover comes off now. I give it 50-50. Oh, I got to take this off. That's another funny design choice they've made here. I don't know why they would make this piece larger than this piece. I mean, maybe to block brush, but if it's a pretty close fit in the hole, and it rides really close to that metal, shouldn't really need that, but I guess they got their reasons. Just make things more complicated, so you take it to the repairman instead of fix it yourself, probably. All right, set that crap aside. Okay, I should lift this right off now, I think. Yep. Big old honking piece of metal that is. It's sad, really. The one we're putting on is plastic, and it's at least as old as this is. Oh ho! So we got a wire. Got some dirt. Got another wire. These are the coils, the kill wires. Unhook these little hooks. So basically, let me get you around here. If you've never seen this before, if you have, well, this is going to be old hat for you. But, yeah, it's going to be a challenge. All right, here we go. Okay, so basically what we got here is this. There's a wire and a piece of dirt. There's a wire. It comes right up to the coil. Okay? And it comes back here, and I see that there's no diode. And I know that there's no diode because that wire goes straight into a spliced plug. Let's see if I can unplug this. Oh, she's going to be tight. Of course, she's going to be tight. Let me guess. See if I can ease it out of there. Yeah. Okay, so you see they're spliced together there. I think you maybe can see that. They are spliced together, two wires going into this one plug. And there's nothing between here and there. Now, these could have internal diodes, I guess. I mean, it's possible. I don't know why they wouldn't. It is conceivable. But if that engine has diodes and this one, they're internal to the coils or something, I'm going to have to use diodes. So what's going to decide that is what's on the other engine. If the Briggs & Stratton has got the diodes, I'm out of luck. I got to use them. Now, what are you? Spark plug wire. Okay, and we got something I got to cut, of course. Woo! Let's kick that around. Kick the engine cover. Diagonal wire cutters. Do I have smaller ones? Yes, I do. That's better. These little nippy cutters. You can get these little nippy cutters probably at Lowe's, definitely at most, hardware stores. Maybe even Walmart, but I don't remember ever seeing them. I'll kick the camera next, I guess. Okay, so this is very small set of angle cutters, and they're flush here. I guess they might even call them flush cutters. I don't know. I call them nippy cutters because that's what they used to call them at Radio Shack. I was ham operator. I used to buy them things all the time when I was working on things because they could really get into a tight spot. They're really good for cutting off wire ties close when you put a wire tie in. Really good for that. All right. Spark plug wire is in my way. And we've got the carburetor. Oh, it's bolted. Of course it is. 10 mil, please be 10 mil. Yes. Being as that's what I got here. Thought rather the whole thing was SAE, but 10 mil. Well, I got that. Take the bolt out. Might be a month. Okay. Bolts out. Throw it in the pile. Now, carburetor. This goes to the little shutoff solenoid. It isn't really a shutoff. It's mostly just to keep you from backfiring. There's a little solenoid on the bottom of this carburetor with a needle that blocks the jet, the main jet. And the point of that is when you shut the engine off, it's a big engine. It spins pretty hard and heavy, nice heavy flywheel. And when you turn it off, it continues to spin for a little bit before it shuts off, which means it continues sucking gas and air through that carburetor. The spark's turned off, but the gas and air is still going through the engine and out the exhaust. That muffler's hot. It's going to light that off and backfire, and it's going to sound like somebody just detonated a bomb. And your neighbors are going to freak. The pets are going to freak. And if you're not used to it, you're going to freak because it does sound like a gunshot right behind your head. So best to have that if you can, but it is not essential for the mower to run. John Deere, however, they eliminated this whole kill wire business. I am not sure why. Saved $1. You have to make make a million mowers. Maybe they saved $1 million, But they eliminated that whole deal, and you turn the key off, it shuts the solenoid off, and that kills the mower. So you turn the key off, and you're waiting a few seconds for that mower to die. It isn't instantaneous. And it's a little off-putting to those of us who have used mowers that weren't John Deere and made like that. You turn the key off and it doesn't instantly die. Your first thought through your head's, well, that didn't work. But it did work. You're just going to have to wait for it. All right. We got them wires. Can I get that past? Bet my life on it. There's a voltage regulator over here, right dead square in the way. And, of course, it's plugged in like... there it is. Now, just get that out. Okay, and this out. What's left? What wire are you? You are the kill wire. Okay, so I've got a paper tag made up for that. Let me get back past the camera again. My room in here, my room to maneuver in my shed is minimal. I have put that mower in my garage because it's just too heavy to push up in the shed. So I got me one of these little tags, just says kill on it. You just put them on here and get it as dirty as you can with your fingers. That's important. Do that. And then press it together. And she's on there. And it'll be on there. And I'm leaving it on there once I install it in the mower. Yeah, it looks a little goofy, but at least the guy that's getting the mower back knows that you took the effort to make sure the wires went where they're supposed to go. And if he ever unplugs it or has to do anything different, they're going to know what the wires are for without having to mark them themselves. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not going to catch fire. So it's a good thing to do. Okay. We are done with this engine, other than parting it out and junking it, and that's probably not video worthy. The reason I have no room in here is I brought all my four-wheelers. Yeah, I did say that. All my four-wheelers to get worked on. And this gigantic piece of crap here, this is an Arctic Cat, a 400 Arctic Cat. It's just a little bigger than the average four-wheeler, I gotta tell you. We got it in the shed, but as you can see, a riding lawnmower doesn't fill the shed quite like this. I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I got robbed by 1/4 of an inch and making 6 feet, and that sucks. And of course, now that I'm older, I'm a little shorter. But if I come over here, the seat is this high. This is a ridiculously oversized four-wheeler. We're going to be working on that later, but that's not what we're doing today. Today, we're doing this engine. So, I'm going to get this piece of junk off of here. I'm going to move the one down here, the Briggs & Stratton, up to the work area and try and get that wiring harness squared away somewhat, installed as best I can. Probably, I hate to do it, but I may have to cut and splice a wire or two. If I do, I hope to solder them. I have solder and heat shrink, and really that's the way. Those crimp-on things are okay until the wire corrodes where the crimp-on is, and then it's intermittent, and then you don't know where the problem is, and it's best to just make it into one wire. Solder is the way to do that. And if you twist them together good, and you get some good heat shrink, and you solder them, it's almost as good as a solid piece of wire. Solid piece of wire is always best. It's not always practical. All right, let me shut this off, move some engines around, and we'll get back to it. All right, so we've got the engine up on the table now, and I see a few things we're going to have to make some executive decisions on. This has the exact same plug as the wiring harness I took off. So I could, and I mean, just got a little length of wire to bolt it down with and everything. So I very well could and probably will leave that wire if it's long enough. Whether or not it's long enough is another thing. It does, however, have those diodes. They are hiding down in behind the starter here somewhere. So, and I hate to do it, but I may have to take the starter off. The coils, like I said, are very rusty, and so are the bolts. And it scares me because those bolts will break off, and boy, have you got something to do then when you're drilling a steel bolt out of aluminum that's little tiny. Kind of a pain in the butt. These exhaust covers don't need to be here anymore because we already power washed the big chunks off of it. Take them off. The exhaust, that's another one of those holy crap moments, because my guess would be, oh, hey, look at that. Guess that's what happens when you get oil in the cylinder from laying it the wrong way, huh? Just comes right out the muffler. Well, throw that out of here. I need that rubber band anymore. So what we got is this. Oh yes, yet another executive decision moment. Things gonna drip oil everywhere. Just stop that. Just stop. And that would be on the voltage regulator. This has a 2-wire. It's an alternator instead of a generator. Instead of pulsed DC one way, it's got a bridge rectifier and a regulator. This is the small one. This is not the high amperage one. You can tell that by this plug. I would guess this is 9 amps. 9 is probably enough. But what's funny is the generator is capable of a lot more than that. They generally determine what you're getting by this thing. There's 2 different flywheels, and these twins almost always have the high output. And because this was a magnetic clutch one, just like the one we're putting on, it will be a higher output. So it's probably a 9. It may even be bigger. I can't really read that number. 554,490 maybe? I just don't know. I can't see it. I could look up the motor, and I probably will, just to determine what voltage regulator it's got. But I'm reasonably confident that I can take the voltage regulator off of that one, because it is also a 2-wire. Graft some plugs onto this so it plugs right in, and use it. I may have to find a place here in the case, in the Airstream, to put that regulator so that it gets a breeze where it needs it. That's all things I can do, though. That is not complicated at all. It's just a matter of, do I need to make that executive decision? And the way to find that out first is to look up this one and make sure I'm right about it, that it's only a 9 amp, which 9 will probably do it, but it wouldn't leave anything extra. And you want extra. For a big old clutch like this has got, I don't know that it draws any more power, but the wires are a little bit heavier, so I'm going to guess it does. Maybe a small amount more. But whatever the case, we're going outside the envelope this was designed for. It'd probably do it, but, you know, then you got to ask yourself, well, for how long? And it's better not to have to think about that kind of thing. It's better to just overkill, and then you don't have to worry about popping something. So I'm going to look into that. But wiring harness wise, I think we're in pretty good shape. This has an oil sensor, just like the other one does. This has an oil sensor plug. I marked it as OPS, oil pressure sensor. So it'll go right on there. Boop, no problem. So for the time being, what I'm going to do is find out what I need to find out about this beast, because it is kind of critical that we have enough amperage. So I'm going to look that up and see if that one's big enough, or if maybe I need to upgrade and put that one kind of retrofitted onto this engine, which can be done. It just needs to be in the cover in the Airstream, because it's got fins, because it is bigger, I'm sure. It's a matter of whether it's necessary. I'll find that out in just a bit. Okay, so I looked this voltage regulator up. This is the 10 to 16 amp voltage regulator, and of course the generator coils there, the alternator, will be plenty. That will be plenty, so we're not gonna have to screw with none of that. Thankfully, that will be fine. I still need to clean a little oil off of here, because this engine, I think, if I had to guess, I'd say these valve covers were absolutely hemorrhaging oil. That's how it looks. I'm not seeing a lot of oil around the heads, where the heads join. One thing that concerns me a little, I don't think it's anything. It's probably because I had it upside down or something when I was rolling it around. But I had oil come out of this exhaust pipe. Now, that can happen if you've got a blown head gasket. It's no big deal. Blown head gasket's actually a very minor thing, at least with a small engine. I'm going to run a compression test on this when I get it together enough to put power to it, just to be sure everything's okay. If for some reason it's not, I have a second engine just like it I can fall back on, but I'm pretty sure this is a decent engine other than somebody adjusted their valves. And man, I don't know if it's even got gaskets. It doesn't look like it has gaskets, which is fine if you use a good quality goop, but I don't think they did. All right, so back to the wiring, I guess. We're going to be putting the wiring harness from, what is that hung up on? Let me come around here and look. The oil. We're going to be transplanting the wiring harness from the old one on, but this does have the diode, so we're going to kind of do a little splicing in places. I got stuff sitting on stuff here. The kill switch and the carburetor, it would appear. Is that the carburetor there? Yes. The kill switch and the carburetor are together on a plug down here. I will separate those and connect them to the wiring harness. But I'm gonna leave enough length that I can get this wire around to where it needs to be. It needs to plug in and have room to do so on the mower that it's going on to, which is not the same as a mower this came off of, obviously. So if anything, a little extra wire won't hurt anything. If you've got a little extra lead length, that's just more room to maneuver if you ever have to take it out and put it back in again. When I pulled that Kawasaki motor off, it was a devil to get unplugged because it was so short, so tight. There wasn't a scrap of extra wire. And I mean, there wasn't even enough to maneuver the engine around and unplug it. It was really in there. This one I don't intend to have that way. I'm going to leave, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches of play so that you can plug it in, unplug it comfortably. In the off chance that you actually need to, it'd be nice to be able to. Also need to look at this muffler. We've got a muffler here, and realize it came off of a Kawasaki. This is a Briggs & Stratton. But looking at this, my God, it's close. I'd almost be surprised if this wasn't close enough. If it doesn't actually fit, I might be able to cut these pipes down here and turn them just a little and put them back on. What will actually happen is I'll probably cut the flanges if they will fit, if they're physically the right size, and bolt them on the engine, then get the muffler where I want it and put them back together. That's a problem for another time, but I just noticed when I was looking at this that the angles are almost how it would be that a Kawasaki and a Briggs & Stratton muffler would be the same. I got nothing. They surely don't make the engine to fit the muffler. That makes no sense. But regardless, it's really, really close. Like really close. Identical spacing. The rotation of these flanges is going to be the problem. But if we want to use this big muffler because it's going to be a lot quieter than something I home spin together to put in there, because not a lot will fit either. You have to kind of go with what fits, which means I've got to take these, what would you call them? Manifolds, I guess, exhaust manifolds. I got to take those off. And every time I do that, I feel a little fear because these bolts want to break off badly. Sometimes they come right out, and sometimes they do not. And it has been my experience that more often they do not, and you've got to really finesse them. You don't want to be throwing a whole lot of heat at this. You've got a valve seal, at least on the intake side. Sometimes you got them intake and exhaust, but you do have valve seals to consider. And what else is up here? Plastic intake manifold, which you could always remove that because I'm going to put another carburetor on it anyway. But suffice it to say, if I'm lucky, these will just come right off and I won't have a bit of problem. But I'm never that lucky. It is a rarity that is how that turns out. They are caked in oil from these valve covers, just hemorrhaging oil everywhere. And that's not necessarily a bad thing unless it's baked into coke. If it's turned into, carbon, why, then she might be on there better. But I'll have to find a proper socket and crack those things out of here. And, of course, the wiring harness. We got to play with that. I need to find a way to orient this so I can work on the whole thing at once. Problem is, I can't face the end I would like to face out, because then it'll be front heavy and it'll want to roll off of here. Now, clamping down this shaft with my little clamp down here, I don't know if you can see it, but this bench has a little clamp here that I can clamp it down with and keep it from flipping off. I guess I could do that. It's not the best, but what is? There probably isn't a best. Be nice if I had a table with a big hole in the middle just to stand engines like this up on. Maybe I should punch a hole in something around. Not this one, but maybe I should, well, not that one either. That's got my tire machine on it. I don't know. I'll think of something. But anyway, we're going to get the wiring sorted out here. And I'll try to bring you along for some of that I think might be interesting or useful to see. All right, let's get sorted around here and start on this wiring. I decided to go ahead and change these coils while I've got everything apart here, and since I'm doing the wiring anyway. And that brings us to how you adjust them. So I've got this finely calibrated instrument here that is used specifically for that, and that is a business card, or in this case, it's a piece of business card stock. It's not even an actual business card. But basically the goal here is you pull that coil out, put this between the coil and the magnet, tighten it up, and then remove the cardstock, which gives you, amazingly enough, exactly the right clearance. I'll start on a new one over here and show you what that looks like from the beginning. Also, the new replacement coils that I got, which I got at a yard sale, they don't exactly fit as is. They're the right coil. They're the replacement coil, I should say. They're a substitution for another one that isn't made any longer. But this engine, it's an older engine, had a little tab that stuck up right here. The old coil that came out is very thin, and it went down in there with no problem. But this one is fat on the bottom, and so when you go to put this end in, it runs into stuff. And so the solution for that is you have to trim out just a little of this aluminum webbing right here. Kind of make both sides the same roughly. I took a little extra actually. But both, if it's even, if this side looks like this side, it'll fit. If it doesn't, well, it won't. Had to Dremel that out a little bit. I've got like 3 or 4 Dremels. It seems like every time I need a Dremel, for some reason I can't find a Dremel, and then I go buy a Dremel, and I've got a lot of Dremels. You can never have enough, though, because I got to tell you, it's one of the things you'll use a lot if you ever have to take a little off of something. The Dremel is one of the best things. And a lot of times it's a job that's just too small for the angle grinder. I could never have gotten my angle grinder in there without pulling this, what do you call it here, is flywheel. And that would be a challenge that I don't need to go into. If it's fine, it's working. Don't fix stuff that works. Trust me on this. Don't fix stuff that works. All right, so there's a magnet. As I bring this around, that magnet's going to rear its ugly head and suck that coil right in. And there it is. So now it is grabbing that coil. I can't even move it now. I'll pull it back out. So you get a hold of that baby and pull it out. Now you can move it again. So what you're doing here is you're getting that magnet lined up so that it's going to touch on both sides of this coil. I need to go just a little bit more. Right, well, just hit the spot. There we go, right there. I'm going to take this cardstock, slip in between the coil and the magnet, and I'm just going to let it go. And it's in. It's touching. Now I just get my tool here and tighten it up. And you don't have to twist these off. In fact, you want to be gentle with them. I got lucky. These weren't rusted in. I've had these break off on me because they were so rusted in. Oh, one more I'll chug over here. That's good. No, it ain't. We got problems. I have bottomed out, but I'm not tight. See that? Now that happens sometimes. This side didn't do that. Let me back this up just a little bit. Let me see here now. Push it up tight. Got it square. No. So what we're going to need is a washer or something. You can cut these bolts off, and I've done it. Take the grinder, just grind a nip off the end of them. Actually, you know what? I'm going to look, see if I got a washer. But if I don't find one immediately, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my grinder and just touch the end of them because it is just the very least amount. Yeah, washer. Well, here's the thing. I don't think I got one. Oh, here's a washer. Yeah, it's too small. Okay. Yeah, we're going to touch these with the grinder. So we're just going to rotate you around a little bit. One grinder. Trip over this engine. I am seriously out of space in this shed ever since I put this freaking monstrosity of a four-wheeler in here. Oh, easy there, easy. Okay. Now address the edge just a little bit. Just the faintest little bit, just to take the hair off of it. Get the other one. Well, quit your hopping. Whew. That's getting hot. A little bit more. That's pretty good. Let me look at these. This one needs more. Woo, getting hot. Okay, we grinded. Now, let's see if these fit. They should, because it was just a tiny amount that they needed rid of. It's still, yeah, it's still magneted in good. Screw that in there. Screw this one in there. If they screw in easy like that, you're okay. If not, sometimes you gotta dink with the threads just a little bit. Sometimes those threads roll over when you grind them. It's all in the dressing, and sometimes even that doesn't help, and you just have to get a sharp edge, lean the thread back out, get a file, trim them up a little. Put that in forward. Put this one down. That's tight. Okay. No wiggle wiggle. Turn the crank here and slide that card out. Now that card gave me the perfect gap. It won't hit the magnet as it goes by, but it is close, and that's what you want. Very close without touching. Now I'm just going to go around a full revolution here and be sure nothing hangs up or touches, and it looks good. It'll be fine. Okay. Well, that's the coils. They got the wires on them. Now, these don't have boots. You talk about cheap. These people are cheap. I think they expect you to take these boots off and put them on the new wires. There's just one problem with that. They've already got the ends on them. And that seriously curtails your ability to easily do that. And these are stuck in there pretty good. Not too sure how I'm going to get that out. But let's see. Let's stretch it all. The rubber's kind of old. That doesn't help. Oh yeah, there it goes. It's out. I got it. All right, let's see if I can get this one in. Probably should have spit on it or something. That's going to be tight. There it is. Turn that around the direction it goes. Oh, of course it's upside down. Well, we're going to have issues there. Come on. A little more. Oh, there it went. I heard it. Yep. Okay, so now we got the end where it belongs. Should go right on here. And problem solved. Only thing I don't like is it looks like this cord is twisted. That's better. And it needs to be in this little slot. There. Then you don't clamp on it with the cover. When you put the cover on it, so I gave you that to get it through there. Okay. Well, I'm going to do the same thing to the other one and get back on the wiring, but that's the coils in a nutshell. It's pretty easy. Let's look here. Yeah, that one's tight too. All right, we'll be back here in just a minute. I think for our next trick, we're going to drain the oil out of this thing. I expect it's dirty. These things always leak, like every time, so I'm expecting to be missing some oil here pretty quick. Let me vent that. Oh, it's pretty thick oil, I gotta say, and it's coming out nice and slow, just like I don't like. I'm just going to put that bucket down here on the ground, well, the floor, and let it roll for a while. I expect it'll be a bit. That is some pretty thick oil, though. But I've had this engine for a couple of years just sitting here. The people I got it from did not fill me with confidence in their maintenance planning skills. But it seems to have real good compression. It's not making any funny noises. I'm going to check it all out a little more thoroughly, but I need to bolt it down to do that. So I'm going to wait till I have it setting in the motor and at least plugged in a little. We're going to maybe run a compression test on it. And I think I want to do that because these are notorious for blown head gaskets. It's a cheap, easy thing to fix. It's not even really that much labor. Well, you got to tear it apart somewhat. It's a little labor, but it's nothing like an overhaul or anything like that. In a car, a blown head gasket is a recipe for disaster. You've got water getting into the engine and all kinds of things going wrong when you blow a head gasket. With an air-cooled motor, really not that big a deal. The compression can get into the oil, and consequently the oil can get into the cylinder. And if oil gets into the cylinder, it smokes like a freight train, but it really doesn't damage much. Most of the time, a blown head gasket is inconsequential to a small engine, an air-cooled engine. You just clean it up good, put a new one on, and you're generally okay. Some of them are water-cooled, though. There are some engines. I had a John Deere here with a Kawasaki water-cooled engine in it that beyond a doubt had a blown head gasket and more. It had lots of things wrong with it. But essentially, it wasn't fit to fix. The water had gotten the block. The engine quit running. The person parked it for a year or two. It rusted into a lump and may have been more than a year or two, honestly, by the look of it. And then I bought it for parts, and there weren't a whole lot of... Actually, no, I think he gave it to me, traded it to me. Whatever the fact is, it wasn't fit to fix, and I kind of knew that when I got it, so I wasn't too heartbroken about it. This one should be okay. Good news is it's not completely out of oil, like you sometimes have. I checked to make sure it was pumping air out the exhaust. I turned the flywheel on it and made sure that air was coming out of the exhaust when I cranked it, so it should be okay. We're going to adjust the valves. Let me bring this camera around here. the valve covers. Turn this camera some more. These valve covers are leaking like a sieve, and they're going to need new sealant. I was going to get gaskets for it, but you know, these come a couple of different ways. Some of them actually came with gaskets, and some of them, they just use the right stuff. Well, they use their own variety of it, I'm sure, but the right stuff is the way to go. That's the brand name. That will seal basically anything. It is good. The right stuff is the way to go for valve cover gaskets, or any, like your sump. A lot of these have a sump gasket. This one, I feel one, it's got a sump gasket, I think. Although, honestly, yeah, that's a paper gasket. But if you can't get a paper gasket, if it's some kind of an emergency, the right stuff will work usually. As long as the parts are pretty close, it'll work. When you've got some surface irregularities, sometimes a paper gasket would help. But I use it for so many things. It's surprising. And it ain't cheap. It's expensive, but you get what you pay for. It is decent. I'm pretty sure you saw the coils. I replaced both of these coils up here with brand new Briggs & Stratton branded coils just because I had them. They need to go somewhere. I'm going to put them on this one. I want to give it the very best chance of running right for a while. And the Chinese coils are okay. They work fine. But if you've got them, use them, and I had them, so I'm using them. Better than buying new ones when I already had these. I've got a Chinese carburetor I'm going to put on this too. We got a lot of things to do to this motor before it ever goes on the mower. Let me jack this thing up here. Bring you up into the elevation we're operating at. Actually, that's not going to be enough probably, but yeah, these carburetors, the intake, get the camera adjusted. The intake manifold's plastic, and it bolts directly onto the heads. And a lot of times they've got a rubber O-ring kind of thing in there, and it works. It ain't great, but at least you don't have to buy a gasket for it. This one does not appear to have a gasket, so I'm going to say it's a rubber O-ring variety. The thing is, if it's bad, you can go to a farm supply and just get a couple of O-rings if you don't want to order and wait. I've already ordered and waited on this fuel pump. I don't know that fuel pump's bad, but I'm changing it. When these go, sometimes they don't pump fuel, but more often than not what happens is the fuel will come in the fuel line, and that diaphragm's perforated somehow, got a hole in it, crack in it, it's old and dry, whatever. And it runs right down in the valve cover and fills your block up with gasoline. That is worst case scenario, really. Water would be worse, but there's no way you're going to get water in there unless there's water in a gas tank. Now it's just infinitely worse. But whatever the case, it's cheap. These things cost $5-6 from China, naturally. There's no point in buying a very expensive part for a part that fails. And this part, it's a regular maintenance item. It's going to quit you. You'll have them, the factory one. I think the ones that they put on the mowers are better than the replacement parts, honestly, because I've had these factory last for years. And then I've ordered the parts through Stens. I've got them through Briggs & Stratton and that, and only got a few years out of them. Now, this is anecdotal. Remember, this is from my own experience. And a lot of the time that was happening to me was about the time alcohol first started becoming a thing in gasoline. And it could very well be that alcohol is destroying these things faster now than it used to. That would make perfect sense. But I have discovered that once the one you've got on it has quit, you'll quit several. It won't just be one. Several years, you'll be getting another one. It's not like it's going to last another 10 years. It just doesn't do that anymore. I couldn't tell you if a new one will last that long anymore either with the alcohol and the gas. The fuel filter, we're changing him out. This one's bad. It looks old and dirty. The one that was on that Kawasaki looked worse, but it's from 2008 and it's probably never been changed. This one has been changed, and I'll tell you how I know. It's got a yellow clamp on this side, and it's got a black clamp on this side. That's a good sign somebody took it off and put a different one on it and got the clamp shuffled around. And not that it matters at all. The clamp color has nothing to do with anything other than from the factory it would have had two matching black clamps. This yellow clamp's a replacement. We're going to have to add a solenoid. The old starter has a solenoid built in on the Kawasaki. This one does not. This one has a stud. See if I can get you around where you can see. This one has a little stud here that 12 volts goes into the starter, and that is it. There's got to be a solenoid somewhere else mounted, and then 12 volts comes to that solenoid, and then the little wire here, this blue one, I believe. Yeah, this blue wire in this wiring harness, once I get it installed, will go to that solenoid. And it's just like a big electronic switch. When you put power, when power comes from this wire to the solenoid to a little terminal, it switches the big terminals. It connects the battery directly to the starter. Crank, crank, crank. When you let go of the key, the voltage is gone from this blue wire. It disconnects power to the starter because it's running now. You don't need to keep cranking. It's a very simple thing, but this one doesn't have it built in, and most Briggs & Strattons don't. So I'm just going to have to probably go to the local farm store and get one. They're pretty cheap. I could order it, and I might order it since I'm waiting on other parts. But right now what we're going to do, we're changing the oil, it's draining. And of course the filter right over there. I have plenty of Walmart El Cheapo special filters over there. What are they? Oh, they are actual Walmart Super Techs. They're not too bad. It takes a 3614, I think it is. Now, of course, it takes a Briggs & Stratton one if you want to spend 3 times as much. But the 3614 physically fits. It has the right threads. It has the right rubber ring diameter, the seal diameter. It works. It doesn't block your oil flow or something. It works perfectly. And it's a lawnmower. This isn't NASA's material here. This isn't the space shuttle. This is a lawnmower, and an old cheap oil filter is plenty good enough for a lawnmower. If this was a Lamborghini, yeah, I'd probably go with the factory part, but it's not. All right, well, I'll bring you back when this oil is still draining about the same speed it was, and we're getting close to half a bucket full. It had plenty of oil in it. That's an excellent sign, but I think they were using really thick oil. It almost looks like 40 weight, or they could have dumped it full of Lucas, because there's people that do that. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea on a motor that's getting a little worn, on a small engine, that is. You can't really hurt it with a little dab of Lucas. But she's thick, whatever it is. And I don't think it's thick from long use. I think it was thick to begin with. Hey, it's cold. Winter's coming. It's a little nipply. All right, well, I'll turn you off here. I'll bring you back when we get... I think I may just go ahead and change this thing, too. That leaking thing there is useless, but that's what it comes with. This is the one off of the Kawasaki, and I have a hunch this is a standard pipe thread on this end, and there was an adapter, probably metric thread into the block that this screws into. Probably something Gravely did to make it easier to change the oil. This is on the wrong side. It doesn't affect anything really, but I would like to hook this up so that it's easier for him to change the oil. Last time we run plumb out of oil. If he's changing the oil regular, maybe he'll check it regular, and maybe it won't do that. But, you know, you can forget. You get a lot of things going, I guess you can forget. And it could very well be just everybody thought everybody else checked it until it run out. Whatever the case, I want to make it easy for the oil to be changed. This thing just going to make a mess. It's best to have, this has a little faucet like on it, a little shutoff valve that you can turn on, and the oil comes out, and there's a hose barb here. It fits a hose. Well, you put a hose on that's long enough to get you over the side where it ain't going to make a big mess. You're a lot more apt to change the oil if it's not going to be a huge problem. Maybe change it more frequently. That's what we're hoping. But I'm going to see if that'll go in there. I'm just about sure it will. And if it does, that'd be great. If it doesn't, well, we're stuck with this. But I'll still probably put some kind of, I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. But I'm hoping this fits. If this little baby fits, that's going to solve a couple of problems all at once. And if I have to, I can just re-drill a hole on the opposite side, because this one went through a hole in the mower right underneath, nice and convenient. You just put a pan under the mower, turned on the screw, and psst, right out the oil went straight into your pan. No muss, no fuss. The oil filter would make a huge mess, I'm sure, because it's the same way on that one. It's down where it'll just be everywhere. But what can you do? All right, we'll be back in a minute. That's got a ways to drain. Well, we finally got the oil out of this thing. I'm going to put the filter on. Now, here's what I use for a filter. This is a Walmart variety, Super Tech. It says ST3614. It's the same as a Fram 3614, and there's a few others. I think maybe STP makes one. The cost is very low. I'm going to get just a taste of this old drain oil here. It doesn't matter that it's used oil. What matters is that you put just a little bit on this rubber seal. If you don't, you'll wish you did when you go take it off, because it will actually be bonded on there in such a way it's never coming off. But like I said before, these are the perfect fit. They just buzz right on there like nothing. They're the exact right size rubber. It's slightly longer, but then this filter, and that's tight enough. You don't want to just break it off on there. It's got to be good and snug. This is made for a car, so it has considerably more filtering capacity because it's expecting to see a lot more oil, a lot higher volume, almost everything more than a lawnmower will ever do. And as a consequence, it's probably 3 times more filter than it needs. But anyway, that is the filter I use, and I've used them forever, and I've never had a problem. And the other thing, I can't stress this enough, people really need to do this. This is what? November? It is at the moment. Date your filter so that you know if it was ever changed. I put 11 to 24. That's November, of course. I could have put the day, but who cares? The month is more important, and the year. You get that on there, you probably got enough. So now you know, 5 or 6 years, oh, hey, that filter's been on there a while. Yeah, I should have changed that a couple of years ago. Typically, I recommend you change these yearly on a mower that you use for yourself at your own lawn, small usage. There's usually an hours requirement on your equipment. It's either printed on it or it's in the manual. Most of the time it's in the manual. But I say that because I've known people to leave these go for years, and I've known people to change them every other mowing. Well, if you're mowing, 15 acres, yeah, by all means, change away. Your oil, really, the hours is what tells you everything, but most people either don't have hours on their smaller mowers. They don't have an hours meter. You could, I guess, retrofit one on. But generally, if you change it every year, I generally change it in the fall when mowing's over. I change the oil, I change the filter, get all the gas out of the carburetor. The easy way to do that is either disconnect the fuel line if it's got a fuel pump like this one, or if it doesn't have a fuel pump, hopefully it's got a shutoff because it's gravity fed and gas will just keep running through. You shut the shutoff off with the bowl good and full of gas, start it up and run it until it plumb dies, and then as it's dying, pull the choke and try and suck every last little bit of gas out of that carburetor, and it'll probably be okay next spring. Sometimes that's not the case, but mostly that will do it. With a fuel pump one like this one, you really got to disconnect the line if you want to get that fuel out of the pump and out of the carburetor, which is where you really don't want gas when you store it for maximum longevity. It's not foolproof. I've had mowers that quit even though the gas was out of them. The parts inside probably from the alcohol gas, it started to corrode a little, and they corroded some more while it was shut off and parked and in the garage and not being touched. It happens. But that's how you give it the best chance of life. All right, the filter's on. The oil has been drained, but I have not re-added oil. I always change the filter first, even though it's probably not necessary. The pump kind of keeps oil from coming through, but better safe than sorry. Drain the oil out, then take the filter off, put your new filter on, then put your new oil in. I'm not sure I have the oil I need for this. I may have to run to the store. So we're going to skip over that spot. Don't worry, I'll remember to put oil in it. I always check before I start them. We got other things to do now. And the thing that just keeps tasking me, the thing that keeps running around in my head, is that muffler. I don't know why it's so close to the exact same fitting as the Kawasaki, which is a completely different engine. But I'm going to take this out of the clamp. I've got it kind of clamped down. Stand it up on the end where I can get at it a little better. And I'm going to pull these little exhaust manifolds off, and we're going to see how close that muffler fit really is. So I shall be back in just a second. Okay, so the question burning in my mind right now, I just simply have to check it, is will this muffler fit this engine? And holy crap, is it close. It looks like it's about a 1/2 inch too narrow, and that's well within the range of what I can do with the hot wrench. I can heat these. It's got 2 pipes, of course. I can heat one of these pipes up and just move it a nudge, and that's that. It should fit. So, okay, wow, so close. That's kind of amazing. Well, good, because that was an issue that I had been worried about, was it really does need a muffler, and the muffler that this would have come with wasn't about to work. Not really. I don't think it would have been away from the body enough based on the way it's built. So yeah, we're in good shape there. What does that leave? Well, we need to change this feller. This is that drain. I do believe that's the same threads. It sure looks it. I'm going to find some tools. Pull this old plastic leaker out and put this in that doesn't leak and solve a problem, we hope. And this is the time to do it because the oil's drained out of it and it's out where I can work on it. Same goes with that muffler. I've got to get that muffler to fit this engine before I install this engine on the mower. And the reason for that may or may not be obvious, but with it up here like this, I can see what I'm doing and get the fitment right. And with it on the mower, you would be looking up at it at an angle where you couldn't really see what you were doing, and you'd just be guessing. Like this, I can actually work on it. So we're going to do it that way. Okay, let me get some tools and change this feller out here. It looks like a crescent wrench is about all I need. And I'm going to say we want some Teflon tape. Let's see what I got. There's some Teflon tape. There's kind of a cheap and crappy crescent wrench, but it'll work. All right. So let's center you up here a little bit. That's probably pretty good. So basically we're going to... stupid metal. Hook onto this. Did you know crescent wrenches have a direction you're supposed to use them? Whenever you're putting power to the crescent wrench, like say unscrewing this, I'm going to hook it on and go up with it. And you always want this little flappy piece in the direction you're turning. You know, I don't know that they even teach that in schools anymore outside of maybe a trade school. I learned that high school shop class. That thing's loose. There's a surprise. I say that, didn't turn my fingers, but I barely touched it with the wrench and it turns. Well, there it goes. Okay. Now, before I go to all the work of Teflon taping and all that business, I want to make sure this fits. But I'm pretty sure it does. It sure looks like it does. Oh, yeah. Yep, that's what we want right there. Let me clean these threads up. I mean, I'm just fixing to gum them back up with Teflon tape. But honestly, I'd just soon start off with it clean and nothing but my Teflon tape. This has some thread dope on it or something, some pipe thread compound. And I'd rather not, if it's all the same, have that on there interfering with my Teflon tape. This part appears to be steel. It's not like pop metal or something, which the other one very well might be. So just as well, use the wire brush and clean that up. Now them threads look nice. Now we can put some Teflon tape on that. Run that in there and pray that it comes out in a direction that'll work. Because that's the other problem with this thing. That other one, doesn't matter which direction you put it in, it's right. This one, you need that hose sticking out, preferably this direction. You don't want it that way. That's towards the front of the mower where there's no room to get at it. And who knows where it'd come out. But this way, you can put a piece of hose on just as long as you like, come right out towards the back of the mower, probably under the mower, probably going to curve that hose down under so that it drains underneath. But first things first, let's get it installed. I just wanted to be sure I knew which direction I was installing it. Teflon tape, as you may or may not already know, installs in a certain direction also. This tape is a little chewed up. If you get something like that, take it off, because it's just going to be in your way. It's going to wad up and make a mess. Okay, so the tape, you hold the part as if you were fixing to screw it in. You put the tape on, and with your dirty fingers, and you turn in the direction you would turn to screw it in. That way, oh, this tape. Okay, let's try that again. Yuck. All right. Another little piece of tape. All right. So you thread this on like so, in the direction you would screw it in. And the reason for that is it's going to leave a tail when you're done. No way around that. You just keep turning it in like so, in the direction that you would have screwed it in. Once you think you got enough, now you screw it in, and that tail is always following. It's always in the back, so it doesn't bunch up in the threads on you, because you kind of want it to go the same direction you're going. Now, I'm going to move the camera just a little so I can get at what I'm doing here. Just take that wrench. Now, you want this pretty snug, but you're only going to get it so snug. I'm going to see, man, I hope I can go around one more revolution, because that's what I need. Is exactly one more. I hope there's enough room in them threads for that. So far, so good. Tighten this up a little. That wrench kind of loose. Go a little more. Now I'm going to break the cardinal rule of crescent wrenching, because I'm out of room. That is the opposite of the direction you're supposed to go. And you want to be sure that is level or just slightly downhill so that it drains. The exit of this pipe needs to be either level with the bottom or preferably just barely slanted towards the bottom, just a little downhill, so that it actually drains. This one is just about level. We're going to go up a little bit more. Just about like that, I think will work. Okay. Actually, it's probably too much. Let me back it up just a twitch. Yeah, that's good. Now we have a shutoff valve. And basically, what you do is you take your, probably not a crescent wrench, put on this. You turn this little valve here. If you can get the crescent wrench on there, that is. There. You turn this little valve out like so. That's open. Unscrew, oil comes out. Screw back in, oil stays in. I want to clean that just a little while I'm here with it and can get it out the rest of the way. That's kind of got some schmoo that probably doesn't hurt a thing. But nonetheless, looks bad. And with it all in the part that goes in and out, I'm afraid it'll get those threads and gum things up or clog them up. Make it where it don't seal properly. Probably wouldn't, but you know. Okay, screw that back in where it belongs. You don't have to break this off tightening it. Just a little bit like that I'm touching and just a little snug. We're going to call that bueno. And we're done with that. I'm going to have to make that muffler fit this engine. And I need to contemplate how exactly I'm going to do that. My thought is, when I look at this, let me get this around here where you can see. When I look at this muffler, I notice that this one is kind of kicked out that way, and this one is more or less exactly straight. I feel like if I bend this one out just a smidge, that's going to be what it takes to get that. There's another possibility too. If it resists bending, I can take my cutoff wheel and cut it. move it just a little. Don't cut it all the way through. Cut it through like 80%. Just leave a tab over here holding me. Move it where I want it. Tack it with my wire welder. Then take it off and weld it the rest of the way. So I can, in fact, I could do that on both sides and just, I'd still leave this intact on, it'd be connected, but it wouldn't be solid so that I could move these to suit me, bolt them on, and then touch them with the wire welder. That's a thought. It's a way to do it, and it may be how I do it. But for the time being, I'm going to try bending it gently. And so what we determined was it's not quite far enough apart. It needs to come out just a smidge. Before I go to all the getting the torch and everything, I'm going to try just the vise and just gently nudge it and see if I can get it to go where I want it to. So we're putting this in the vise. I'm going to clamp it down gently. I'm not going to go nuts. Okay. And then we're just going to give it the least little twink. Here, I'm going to tighten that just a bit more. Now let's see if that'll bend at all without turning the vise. I got that. Maybe not tight enough. All right, just a twink. No, I'm turning the vise. So let's back this out a little. That's a pretty rugged pipe right there, let me tell you. Now we're going to tighten it up again. Way out here. Now that gives me more room. There's more pipe here. That's the only place it can bend. It's not going to bend up here much. Let's see if I can give it just a crank. Nope. Now I could heat it, and it may bend just a little. I'll think on this. I might end up touching it with the cutoff wheel. I was really wanting to avoid that, but that might be where we're at, I gotta tell you. Well, I don't know. Let me think on this. I'll come back. Probably gonna have to torch it a little at first, and if that doesn't work, well, we're gonna have to put a little nick in it, cut these through 3/4 or a little more of the way on both sides, and then they'll be mobile enough I can move them some and bolt it on. And then once I've got it where I want it and the bolt's good and tight, then I can weld it, let it cool, take it off, and it'll fit every time. But let's first try to bend it just a little bit. I'm going to have to hot wrench it a bit. Well, okay, guys. I put just a slight little kink on it in the vise. I didn't even heat it up. And here's the result. Bolts right up, right where it belongs, got gaskets in it. I'm going to change those bolts. This flange on the ones I took off is thin. It's not very thick. And the one that's on there is a good 1/4 of an inch. And so the bolts I feel are too short. I don't want to torque them down good and tight with those bolts. So I'm going to take one out, take it to the farm supply, get me some that are 1/4 of an inch, maybe even 1/2 an inch longer, and go with that. And maybe some lock washers, because my faith in those staying tight is not the best. But long story short, it fits, and I didn't have to lean on it to get the screws in either. They went right in. So this issue is solved. Hallelujah for that. Now, I ordered a fuel pump because I don't trust that fuel pump. It's on the way. I'm waiting. What else? I think that's, solenoid. I had to order a starter solenoid. I've got that coming. So, and it's getting dark. So I'm going to have to quit on this for now, and we will pick this back up here. Not too awful long for you, but probably a day or two for me. We've got holidays coming up too. That's going to stall us out a little bit. But I'll bring you back when I'm ready to do something else on it here in just a second for you, and might be an hour or a day or two for me. Well, we've had to move this operation to the garage, like I mentioned before, because it is getting cold. I've got engine moved in here. I put, we got the, what you call it, the solenoid in. I've put that in the back corner here where it won't short on anything. but there's just limited space. And I had to drill a hole in some 1/4-inch plate, and that took actually 2 holes. That took a little while. This is some thick steel right here. I don't know if I can get an angle to show it, but yeah, it's not quite 1/4. It might be 1/4, but I don't think so. I think it's 3/16 maybe, but it's a little durable. And we got that shaft adapter. Let me show you what we got here. So basically, this is going to slide over the shaft of Scott and bring it up to that 1 inch we're looking for, or inch and change, I forget what it is. Whatever it is, it's the right size for that. So that'll make that fit. And it came with some bolts that we're probably not going to use. And it came with a reduced key, which is laying here somewhere. Anyway, there's a key that will fit in this shaft and is longer or wider, however you want to describe it. It's a different size than the one it's got. You know, now that I think about it, I don't know where I've laid that. Ah, there it is. So here's the key. It is not rectangular, or it's not square, it's rectangular, because this adds some length to how big the key needs to be to fit in there. And then it's got this little short key for the part of the shaft that's solid, which I may have to, it sticks out just a little, may or may not have to trim that, we'll see. But anyway, video getting kind of long, we're gonna have to cut it there. Next video, we're gonna put that shaft adapter on, get the motor mounted. You know, I'm debating on whether I want to put the shaft adapter on. Because we still got to run a compression test on this engine, make sure everything's on the up and up there. I'm probably pretty confident it is, but, you know, better to test now than find out later after you've done all the work. I've got to change some of these eyes. These eyes are too big. They will go to the solenoid now. They used to go to the starter. We're going to make them smaller so that it will fit on that solenoid properly and not be all okay. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up for now. We'll bring it back next episode. We should be assembling it all. It should be coming together. Anyhow, I want to thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like the videos. I'm going to make a playlist out of this series, so start to finish. If you've got one of these Graveleys that you've blowed up the expensive motor for, this may be useful for you, because as I encounter the problems, you encounter the problems. We did have one other funny thing happen. The belt, the drive belt for the drive wheels, there's a big spring up there under the deck that hooks on to keep tension on that belt. So, of course, naturally, it fell off when I pushed it around over here. I got to hook it back up, and I'm going to have to drop the deck to do that, and it's got a little stop to keep you from doing that, so I have to fight with that a little bit. I may do that off camera, but I'll show you where that spring is just in case this sort of thing happens to you. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll bring this back in the next episode.